and welcome to the Friday, April 2nd, 2021 Easter Bonnet edition of On Iowa Politics. Baseball season opened this week, so as a tip of the cap to Major League Baseball, we're planning a 3-hour podcast with plenty of spitting and scratching and no doubt some swings and misses. This week, an early look at the end of the end of a saga, and unlike MLB games, a lightning round. Hi, I'm James Lynch of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. With me today are Tom Barton of Quad City Times. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, James.
Erin Murphy, Lee Newspapers Statehouse Bureau Chief.
Good morning, James. Go Brewers, and my apologies to the Twins fans both
Hey.
and on the podcast.
And Gazette opinion editor Todd Dorman. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
Careful, Erin, you're outnumbered. You can find us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to On Iowa Politics wherever you find your podcast. First up, an early look in what it called a very early look at 2020 gubernatorial races. 538.com rated Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds' re-election very likely. The 2020 election will not only determine who controls the governor's office and the direction of state policy and legislation, but will likely offer Iowans a glimpse of presidential hopefuls in the 2024 cycle and beyond. Reynolds has not formally announced her re-election plans, and despite the Iowa poll showing that a majority of Iowans don't want her to run again, there's little doubt she will seek a second full term. So let's do a very early look at her re-election chances down here at ground level. Erin, it's been a tough year for Reynolds and all governors dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. Reynolds has certainly taken her share of criticism for her handling of COVID-19. If most everyone is vaccinated by summer, if the kids go back to in-person school in August, and fans can go to Hawkeye and Cyclone football games like in the old days, is Reynolds a lock for re-election?
A lock is probably a strong term, but if those things are as you described, certainly makes her strong case even stronger. And I think you raise a good point about looking ahead and how things might look in future months. And if you think about it, between now and Election Day 2022, we'll have completed a whole nother school year and be into a third one, if you're counting the one we're currently in as one. So there's a long time between now and then, and if things are back to normal and moving, I suspect, and I've said this multiple times here on the podcast, that the Democrats will make the governor's handling of the pandemic an issue on the campaign. But I equally suspect that if things are as you described by the summer and fall of 2020-22, which is more than a year away, I don't know how much weight that will carry with voters. It's going to be a distant memory. And look, for a public health perspective, we should all be rooting that be the case. So yeah, I think if that's the way things look by then, that makes Reynolds' sailing a little smoother.
And conversely, Erin, if we don't achieve herd immunity, or if there's a fourth surge and we don't get back to business as usual, does COVID-19 become for Reynolds like Vietnam for Lyndon Johnson? I assume you've heard of Lyndon Johnson in Vietnam.
I'm not that young. I have, yes. But bless you for suggesting as much. Yeah. Conversely, if this is still a very real issue that we're dealing with on a daily basis, another year and a half from now, yeah, Reynolds and probably, honestly, any governor will be in incumbent governor will be in dire straits, regardless of political party and whether fair or not at that point. I mean, my God, if we're still dealing with this in the fall of 2022, it might be fair to question at that point whether anybody could have done anything about it. But yeah, I mean, if we go through another surge and have another bout like we did this past winter, then yeah, that's not going to look great on the resume of someone wanting to be the state's top executive again.
In talking to Republicans, they didn't share polling data, but suggested that the governor's numbers were looking very good early in 2020, even midway through the year. But as the pandemic numbers went up, went the wrong direction, they said there was some softening of those numbers. On the other hand, if you look at some of the actions she's taken, they seem to be very popular with the base, relaxing the mask mandate, relaxing, restrictions on inside dining, those sorts of things. Those things are popular with her base. I was at a Republican fundraiser last night, and I could probably count on one hand the number of people wearing masks, and pretty much all of us were news people. There were a number of people who were protecting their hands with their mask, walking around with a mask in their hand, I guess, just in case they were
That's good.
somebody stuck out their hand to shake hands or something. I'm not sure what the reasoning was there, but yeah. So I mean, I think she's solidifying her support among the base. I don't expect she's going to get a primary challenge in 2022.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think you're right, Aaron. I mean, if we're back to normal, a year from now, even sooner, uh, people are going to there's going to be some other problem to deal with.
Yep. We always say that, at this point in the cycle, we talk about the news of the day, and we start to think to ourselves, well, will this be an issue on the campaign? And then usually someone reminds ourselves that, hey, we're X number of months out, that the landscape's going to be totally different. This would be the one time. It will be interesting to me. I mean, literally a once in a century event. Could this be the one kind of issue that has some staying power, and that even if by this summer everything's back to normal, could this still move voters a year from now? Maybe, because this was so big and so unique and so different. Maybe I think you've said it right, James. She's not going to get primaried because of this, so she's not going to lose the Republican base in a general election over this. So she's fine there. We know the Democrats weren't going to vote for her anyways. That this didn't change anything that way. The question then is for the leaning voters, the swayable, convincible, persuadable voters. Has any of this changed their minds about Kim Reynolds? And that's something we don't know.
I guess I would expect Democrats to make an issue of it in the sense that this, as you said, is sort of a once in a century test of leadership, and they will make the case that she failed. That the biggest threat to everyday life in Iowa, and the governor didn't seem to be up to the challenge. I guess that would be the argument I would expect from Democrats, regardless of what the COVID situation is
Right.
a year from now and going into the election season.
Yep.
Todd, I guess to defeat Kim Reynolds, it seems like Democrats are going to have to expand their vote share in rural Iowa and outperform Fred Hubbell in the urban and suburban areas. And I think there's little doubt that former President Donald Trump turned off many former Republican or swing voters, especially suburban women. Without Trump on the ballot, does Reynolds have a decent chance of winning back those voters?
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I think that's possible. I mean, with regards to Trump, that's another thing that's sort of connected to the pandemic, is that there was a feeling among folks who were critical of Reynolds that she sort of managed the pandemic using the Trump playbook, and a lot of the things that the bills that she's going to be signing from the legislature and has signed, some of them are sort of Trumpy. So, and she's stayed, stayed pretty tight with the president during all of his problems, and if he runs for president again, I'm sure she'll be supporting him. But so it's a little bit hard for her to kind of separate herself from people, from Trump and that whole. But by then, how much is that going to matter? I guess it will matter if Trump is on the scene and running for president in 2022, that could make a difference. But if he shows up and fundraises and holds rallies in Iowa and Republicans go stand next to him, I mean, that will kind of emphasize that. I mean, I think the where the pandemic response might have staying power is sort of in this question of competence, which legislative candidates don't really have to worry about that so much, and Congress and Senate, I mean, they're going to go be part of a legislative body, but the governor is a singular executive with a lot of power, and as we saw during the pandemic, she basically was making all of these decisions without the legislature, without anyone else. She was sort of the COVID czar, if you, if you, I'm sure she would bristle at that description. But so yeah, all of that, those arguments about that we need someone that can manage well, that those are going to be the questions that are affected by the pandemic. So I think the Democrats need to find somebody a candidate who has, strong management, skills. People talk about uh, Franken, the Senate candidate. He was an admiral and, commanded task forces and things. I don't know what sort of politician he'll be, or what kind of how he'll be on the stump and whether he'll appeal to people, because that run for Senate in the primary was sort of all virtual and socially distanced, so we didn't really get much of a chance to see him out on the trail. But uh, someone like that, or another candidate that kind of can contrast and say, I managed these crises and did far better than this governor. I don't know exactly who that is, but that would be if I were a Democrat, and if they ever asked me for my opinion, which they don't.
I
That
think
would be at my
you
expense.
use the word management, Todd. I think that's good. And the other one I'd add to that is leadership. Someone who exudes leadership ability. I think you're. I think you make a good point there.
Well, it's finally over. More than 4 months after Election Day, the race for an open seat in Iowa's 2nd District has ended. Tom Barton is smiling, cheering. On the basis of a 6-vote margin, Republican Marionette Miller Meeks had been previously provisionally seated in the U.S. House of Representatives. Democrat Rita Hart petitioned the House to conduct its own look at the results, arguing there were 22 legally cast but uncounted ballots that would have given her a victory. The House administration rejected Miller Meeks' request that the petition be dismissed. But this week, Rita Hart announced that she was ending her quest to have the election looked at by the House Administration Committee. And we've been following this saga every step of the way. Tom, tell us the end of the story.
Yes, so the 2020 election in Iowa has finally ended nearly 5 months later. As you mentioned, Democrat Rita Hart on Wednesday abruptly dropped her bid to overturn her 6-vote loss to Congresswoman Marionette Miller Meeks. She abandoned a long legal and bitter partisan fight that threatened to drag on through the summer in the face of shaky support from her own party. So after months spent asking Congress to investigate the election results and conduct a uniform hand recount of ballots, claiming, as James noted, that there were 22 legally cast but uncounted ballots. Hart's reversal takes pressure off of moderate and vulnerable Democrats in competitive districts who appeared increasingly uncomfortable of the possibility of voting to overturn a state certified election, particularly after Democrats bashed Republicans for trying to overturn former President Donald Trump's 2020 electoral defeat to President Joe Biden by voting against certification of the Electoral College results in key swing states based on unfounded claims of voter fraud that led to the violent and deadly insurrection on the U.S. Capitol January 6th. Hart's news also followed weeks of persistent House GOP attacks and fundraising efforts, attacking Rita Hart's challenge as an effort to steal the election as part of a partisan power grab to pad House Democrats' narrow majority. The National Republican Congressional Committee began airing ads either this week or last week targeting Iowa's lone Democrat in Congress, U.S. Representative Cindy Axne, over the House panel's ongoing review of the 2nd District election results. Hart, though, made clear in her statement Wednesday announcing her decision to withdraw her election contest that she stands by her claims. Hart, in her statement, said that, quote, despite our best efforts to have every vote counted, the reality is that the toxic campaign of political disinformation to attack this constitutional review of the closest congressional race in 100 years has effectively silenced the voice of Iowans. She went on to call it, quote, a stain on our democracy that the truth has not prevailed, and my hope for the future is a return to decency and civility.
We can all wish. We can all wish. I covered a GOP fundraiser here in Cedar Rapids last night. Senator Rick Scott from Florida was a featured attraction. But when Marionette Miller Meeks arrived, she got the rock star treatment. And people were really cheering her and congratulating her. And she spoke at the fundraiser, and she got very emotional and started to choke up as she talked about this challenge to her win. And at the same time, I guess in sort of what we've come to know about Marionette Miller Meeks, she's pretty strong-willed. She sounded defiant last night. She said, "We were in a staring contest with Nancy Pelosi. She blinked," which went over very well with that crowd of Nancy Pelosi. Tom, any idea of what happens next, or is this all over? And I guess what happens next for Rita Hart? Does she have a political future?
Yeah, so this definitely seems to be over. Her attorneys and campaign filed the official paperwork and officially withdrew her contest from or before the Committee on House Administration. So this definitely seems over. I mean, it's clear that she doesn't have the votes in the House. It's clear that again, House Democrats were not comfortable with taking this vote on the floor. So I think it's been officially settled. Hart has not indicated as of yet what her next moves are or if she will run in 2022. But you have to think that the blowback over her decision to contest the election results before the democratically controlled House will make it extremely difficult for her to run for this seat again. It would definitely become a liability for her on the campaign trail. And make for an easy GOP fundraising pitch to mount attack ads against her over the issue and distract voters from any campaign messaging she would hope to put forward. In fact, Iowa GOP party chairman Jeff Kaufman, in a statement, said Hart's withdrawal of her contest, quote, should signal to every Iowan that the fight to take back the House and Senate in 2022 has begun. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, how secure is Miller Meeks' grip on that seat, considering Democrats have like a 25,000 voter advantage in the 2nd District?
Yeah, I think it's tenuous, and Miller Meeks on Wednesday acknowledged that the election results show an evenly divided district. She said, quote, we're about as evenly divided as you can get. And she said that for those people who supported me, this is a relief and validation for them. For those who did not support me, I will truly work hard to be a congresswoman for everybody in the 2nd District. And she's been working hard to promote that image in recent weeks, touring and administering COVID-19 vaccines at vaccination clinics in counties across the district to promote vaccinations, pushing to safely reopen schools, introducing legislation to help veterans reenter the workforce. She traveled to the southern border to call attention to the influx of migrants that have overwhelmed shelters there and pushing legislation that will require the Department of Homeland Security to test all migrants crossing the border for COVID-19 that DHS plans to release in the community. So she's definitely been promoting herself as this career public health official in Congress who is working to help protect Iowans and recover from the pandemic. And so I think she's acknowledging that this is an evenly divided district and trying to show herself as this licensed physician and public health official who is trying to work on these bipartisan issues surrounding the pandemic and showing that, look, I'm fighting for Iowans, I'm fighting to keep you going and trying to get back to a return to normal.
Well, we'll see how that goes. I'm sure. Go ahead, Todd.
I think she can double her victory margin easily. So, I mean, it's at that fundraiser, James. Did she bring out the 6 voters who decided the election? Landslide.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Moving on, we're going to have a lightning round here. First up, will Chuck Grassley run for re-election? Yes, no, what?
I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you to call on us. I'll start.
Okay, Erin.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Todd.
Yep.
All right, it's unanimous. If not, who will be the Democratic and Republican nominees? We'll go in reverse order this time. Todd.
Oh, I have no idea. Because I think Grassley's gonna run, and then I think that's gonna scare off anyone with any sense. So.
Well, we know Jim Carlin is running.
Well, yes,
Grassley. Yeah. Tom.
The same answer as Todd. If Grassley runs, he's going to scare anybody off. If he doesn't, I guess as of now, the default would be Jim Carlin, but I don't know that there's much support from him among the party.
And Erin.
Chuck Grassley versus Al Franken.
All right.
Mike Franken, I'm sorry.
see, that's exactly what happened when I couldn't remember his first name earlier. I almost said Al, and I'm like, it's not Al. What is it?
I would love to see that matchup, by the way.
That would be a terrific campaign.
Yeah.
Is it 5:00 yet? I think I need to talk. Holy moly.
All right. We talked about the governor's race in 2022. Who will be her challenger? A lot of names have been mentioned: Rob Sands, Cindy Axne, J.D. Scholten, Liz Mathis, Abby Finkenauer, Mike or Al Franken. Tom, who's going to be the Democratic challenger?
Rob Sands.
Erin.
I'll go with Axne. I have this weird feeling about Rob Sands that I don't know that he's going to run for either governor or Senate. So I'm going to say Cindy Axne.
All right. And Todd?
I actually kind of think J.D. Scholten might run. And I mean, if you're going to find somebody to increase your margins, or close the margins in rural Iowa, he spent the better part of 5 years campaigning in Northwest Iowa and almost, pulled a huge upset. So he's intriguing. He's not from Des Moines, which would be an interesting switch. And so I think it seems like he's interested. I mean, he's out doing stuff.
And that's also why I picked Axne, because they keep saying, how come we Democrats keep picking Des Moines Democrats, and then they still do. So
yeah, that's a member of Congress. That hasn't worked out very well for governor. I mean, Nussel tried, and
Jim Ross Lightfoot. Yeah. And finally, Final Four winner, Erin.
Baylor over Gonzaga in a fantastic game. Two great teams. I don't know how it's not those two.
Tom.
I'm going to take the reverse. I'm saying the Zags over Baylor.
All right. And Todd?
Yes, stupid Gonzaga. I mean, why do we even play the season? They've been number one all year. They're undefeated. I mean, we could have skipped the whole thing.
Well, if any of these things happen, we'll talk about it on a future edition of On Iowa Politics. If you enjoyed the podcast, tell a friend and subscribe to us wherever you find your podcast. Send fan mail to podcast@thegazette.com. You can find us on the homepages of the Quad City Times, Sioux City Journal, Muscatine Journal, Mason City Globe Gazette, Waterloo-Cedar Falls Courier, and the Cedar Rapids Gazette. BackDrop will take us out. If you know an Iowa band or musician who should be on our show, send us a sound file and subscribe to On Iowa Politics on iTunes and Stitcher. For Tom, Erin, Todd, and our producer, Stephen, I'm James Lynch. Thanks for listening. Stay well.
Again.